What's up, everybody? This is Phil Rogacki.
And I'm Jared Abergina.
You're listening to Two Tree Guys Podcast. All right, this show is was not scheduled whatsoever. So we're definitely impromptu to have a show right now in the middle of the day, and a lot of people are watching, probably going, "What the heck's popping on?" Because they usually announce it a few times before we come online. But today we got a special guest, Mr. Mark Shipp. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Mark Shipp is the tree care insurance and risk guru. This guy knows more about insurance and risk management for our industry than anybody I know by far, for that, and not only being a guru, but also a good friend and someone that I've trusted in a long time for advice. I've called you up with questions about the industry, about insurance. Can we do this? Can we not do this? And always giving me the straight answer and no bullshit.
Absolutely.
For that. And Mark is a senior executive vice president for Hub International, and he's the founding broker of Arbor Max. And everybody's heard of Arbor Max. At every single trade show, Arbor Max is there. They're a sponsor for just about every single event there is.
Absolutely.
And you've been in the industry for 28 years, and your mom was in the industry for 58 years.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you grew up knowing this stuff. You were the sounding board, as you were telling me about how your dad passed away at 13, and your mom would come home and
unload,
and you would listen to everything.
Yep.
And you would learn probably the do's and the don'ts and what to do. And,
absolutely.
And I think that's why, we've connected so much, because you speak my language. You understand what I'm thinking and what I want to know, from that. So, dude, I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm excited just to hear your story, because I've heard bits and pieces, but I never heard the Mark Shipp story.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling after the show, there will be a novel, a biography that'll be coming out in some way or some form.
My wife keeps pushing me.
You should. You have some stories, But one of the most important features about Mark and his greatest attribute is he is the best hugger.
Thank you.
So have you ever met Mark? How tall are you?
6'7".
6'7", and he gives you a hug and about crushes your head, because you're at chest height with him, or your head's at chest height. So before we start any show, we drink some beer, because hence Two Tree Guys and a bucket of beer, and we're missing one of our guys today, and he's probably going to be watching and super pissed off at me right now. But Jared Abergina isn't with us, and he had a big job he had to go do today and be on there, but maybe he'll call in. So Jared, if you're watching, I'm sure you're going to see it. Hopefully you call in and be a part of it, and I'm sorry.
Sorry. I missed you, Jared.
Sorry. You'll have to come back for part 2.
I'll drink your beer, though.
So this beer we're going to be drinking today, this is an absolute staple of breweries. This is the 9th largest craft brewer in the United States. They started in 1996 in San Marcos, California, by Greg Koch and Steve Wagner. And any store, any restaurant, anywhere I go, I see Stone Brewery. And a cool part about this place was I used to prune their trees. I used to take care of their garden. If you haven't been in San Diego to their beer garden, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I've been there.
It's cool as hell. You can walk around. I mean, it's just an awesome place they've created there. I mean, they have places. They just opened one up in Napa, California, Richmond, Virginia, Oceanside, Pasadena, J Street, and San Diego International Airport. And they're a staple in the craft brewer. So I'm excited to drink a beer today with you, man, and talk about the industry and talk about, some good times we had drinking beer in the pool at Winter Management. Absolutely. And the conversations we have, and, the things that have come to pass and the things that are in our future for that. So grab a beer, man, and let's try one. All right. I'm trying, this is a double IPA. It's Fear Movie Lions. They put the label upside down.
Nice.
Not sure why, but I don't know. So this is an 8.5. that I'm going to be drinking here. You know what? I'm going to drink mine out of a bottle.
This is Exotic Destinations IPA. It's
Exotic?
a fueled journey.
Let's see. Exotic Destination. Ooh. Was it the colors you picked that one?
Oh, just grabbed it.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody who's watching here. All righty. So let's dive into your story. You know, I mean, 28 years in the tree care industry, working with companies all over the country.
Yes.
All over the country. But let's talk about how you got in this industry. Where are you from? You know, how it all began.
Well, originally from Texas. My parents met when my dad was going to USC. She was from Oklahoma. He was from Texas. Started the family back in Texas. Then came back to California when I was going into the third grade. Mm-hmm. My mom was in the insurance business even back then. So, father passed away when I was 13.
Yeah.
And my mother's just, she's, you know, I went to UC Santa Barbara, graduated with my political science degree, decided not to go to law school, worked my way through college doing a variety of jobs, including construction, and got my first job out of college was in construction management for an underground utility company. So I was doing takeoff estimates and those kinds of things. And I didn't quite have that unique ability for that particular job. I just knew that I liked the people. And there was a construction slowdown. I was, got let go from the company. Was out of work for about 6 months. My mom looks over at me and says, "Mark, I think you should try insurance."
And how old were you then?
It was like 27.
So 27. Well, technically, you've had 14 years of experience since you've been 13 or 13,
yep.
Right? 13 and learning about this, hearing all the good and the bad that's coming from it. But you're born in Texas, came back to California, and was it her own company or did she work?
She worked for a couple different companies.
A couple different companies for that, and then getting let go. From your construction company or the gas company. Yep,
underground utilities, yes.
And where were you when she asked you that question?
We were at home. It was just the two of us. I was kind of down on myself. It was about 6 months. I was about out of work for about 6 months. She said, "Mark, you'd be really good at this business." And I resisted going into it because I told her I'd never go into this freaking business. How
many people have said that to their parents before? I'll never do what you do, Mom, Dad, never. Yeah. And sure enough, they follow. And I mean, it's funny, Rich Kingsborough and Cindy. I mean, you got Billy and you got Kelly. You're like, nah, we'll never do what our mom and dad does. And now look at them, from that. My dad was a mailman, and I actually looked to becoming a mailman. Yeah. But my mom was a mail person, and my brother-in-law became one. Wow. And it was following in the family. He's but I didn't. I moved out, from there. But I was looking into it for that. So you were sitting there, you were down on yourself. I mean, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I did an internship at a law firm after I graduated from UC Santa Barbara, and absolutely hated it.
Why is that?
Because I modeled kind of like what would life be like as a lawyer? What would the focus be? How would it be an actual? I go from theory to application. Mm-hmm. I was, kind of grandiose, wanted to save the world, loved the study of constitutional law, loved the bigger problem, the strategic, kind of. But you go to law, and it's basically you're in a fight every day, and it's about billable hours. It's about, and I try to look at what was the life of a young partner like, or a young lawyer that wanted to be a partner. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that one of the young partners, the only time he saw his child is when his wife would bring it into the office. Mm-hmm. Awake. I'm like, that is not a lifestyle I want. Mm-hmm. So that just left me to try to find out what was the next thing.
I mean, what drove you to want to be a lawyer?
It was to do some good for the world.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah.
We are.
Oh,
that's for sure.
Thank you.
That's for sure. So, Mom says, "Mark, you need to get in the business."
Yeah. So I went to work at Farmers for a year. Got a little bit of insurance acumen. Went from there to work with her at the company that she was working for, and she was a super technical insurance person. Didn't really have marketing skills. Didn't really have, and she was like kind of an engineer kind of type, and wasn't really a great mentor for me other than learning insurance specific things. So the one thing that really stands out to me, I remember it was probably the second day I was working with her, and she looked at me and she said, "Mark, I got to tell you something." She said to me, "Mark, you always do what's best for your clients, and you'll be taken care of. And if they are trying to push you to do something that you shouldn't, don't. Always do what's best for them, in spite of them and for them." And that stuck with me. It stuck with me through my whole career, and I've lived that credo, and it's really made, it's kind of like my backboard. It's like, what's the
when all else, it's your North Star.
It's my North Star, absolutely.
When all else fails, you go to this, and you're just like, always do right by them.
Yep.
Always, no matter what.
No matter what.
Because I mean, there's times where try to persuade you, and what about this, and how do we do this, and but you always shoot it straight, no matter what,
because it comes back around. It's you always want to know that your clients are taken care of, and that they have the knowledge that they need to make the appropriate decisions.
Yeah,
and that's just been a filter of decision making throughout my whole career.
Yeah. That's neat. I mean, you need a T-shirt that says that. Mark Shipp, and the same. So, you got in the industry. You worked at Farmers. Then how'd the story go to get into the tree care side?
Went to the independent agency my mother worked for. Worked there for a little while. Wasn't quite successful there. Had a couple of good relationships. One was with a landscape company. He introduced me to one of his friends that was a tree guy. And he said, "Mark, you got to talk to my buddy. He's absolutely bleeding over here. He doesn't know what to do. See if you can help him." And I went and I spent a day and a half with him.
Yeah.
I said, "Tell me about the business. Tell me about what you do. Show me what you do."
Yeah.
And I just came in with a curiosity that no one had ever had.
Because what were these tree guys or companies doing before? I mean, what company were they? Just with any insurance company?
It was
or
mostly like non-admitted carriers, really, really crappy insurance. That insurance carriers didn't really know the industry, thought of them as tree cowboys, and really didn't know the ones that were really focused on the right safety protocols, had the good relationships with their employees, did the right things and wanted to do the right things. There's no way for them to really understand and separate those.
I mean, it's even to this day. I mean, it's still a lot of questions up there with insurance companies of, we don't know how to insure you.
Right.
We don't know, because they don't know the industry as much,
right. A lot of them don't.
And that's where, Hub and Arbor Max really came in, because they understood the tree care industry. They understood the risks that we had and how to work with us to give us, a fair price and that, because it's not cheap to work in the tree care industry, as you know.
That's correct.
With that. So you met this, do you remember what company that was, that tree company?
It was a small company in Ventura.
Yeah.
It was like 2 employees.
Do you know if they're still around?
They're not.
No. Gotcha. So you came in, you started insuring them.
I did. And then lo and behold, I get this kind of bulletin from one of my favorite carriers, which at the time was CNA. And they had these things called CAM program. It was a commercial affiliated marketing. And they had this thing, they called it TAP, the Arborist program. Or one time it was called NAP, National Arborist Program. And they gave a description of the business and what, so it just really, they were starting to embrace it as a quality frontline carrier. And we had a great relationship with them, and I just took off.
So wait, now let's go back to that National Arborist Program. The company you were working for, this was the program that kind of got started.
This is what was called CNA had these programs that were called commercial.
And who's CNA?
It's an insurance carrier.
Okay, CNA, gotcha.
So they had these special programs for slotted business like tree care.
Okay.
And they send a bulletin out to all their agents. Hey, if you want to go after tree care companies, we've got the best product. And so I'm like, hey.
So CNA developed this.
Uh-huh.
And where did they get it from? I mean, they've got a few companies, and then they developed a program because they seen that it was such a big gap. Mm-hmm. Let's go after the tree care companies and provide great insurance for them because nobody else is really helping them out right now.
Exactly.
Okay, so then you seen that.
Yep, and then this was pre-internet days.
Uh-huh.
So what I did was there was this. Everyone remembers. I don't know if you remember microfiche and used to. I'd go to the library and print out lists from microfiche from this thing called Dunn's Microcosm.
Okay.
And I drove to every library from, basically from Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo through San Diego that had, this Dunn's Microcosm system, and printed out all these lists of tree care companies. And so,
really?
Yeah, and then
they had their address, their phone number, everything on there.
Had some statistics, kind of like Dun and Bradstreet.
Okay.
And then just created my plan. And then,
what do you mean you created your plan?
Well,
what's your plan?
Well, to go after the tree care business, to tell them that I was specializing. And this is way.
And this is from CNA of the NAPS program, and you go, because your one interaction that you had with this one, you just said, "This is it."
I flipped the switch. I said, "I'm focusing on this." I joined the TCIA, or then it was the NAA, the National Arborist Association.
Okay.
I joined the ISA, the Professional Tree Care Association of San Diego, and then just started giving and learning. And my first winter management conference was in San Diego, and it was I think that was 96.
And let me tell you,
or maybe
you have become the staple to the winter man. I mean, if you're not there, it is not a winter management conference. It is not. You were the first guy every time I come that's greeting everybody at the door. And I see you. I'm like, there's Mark. We are at the winter management conference. It's official now. Yeah. So I mean, what do you think clicked in you to where you were like, this is the target I want to go after. These are the people I want to help.
Well, it's generally. Most tree care company owners are great people.
Yeah.
And when they're great people and have good attitudes and have a passion for what they do, they're a good mix for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to have everything right.
Yeah.
You just have to have the right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to have the right attitude and I think kind of a benevolence towards their employees.
Gotcha.
And that benevolence towards their employees turns out to help them to become more profitable. And when I was really, really active in AA and then became the TCIA, I was on the board of the association as an associate member director for 6 years.
Yeah.
And I got to see, the transformation of the industry start to happen. There was a lot of confusion between the National Arborist Association and the ISA and what their different, missions were. We helped design the mission to advance the tree care industry and change the name to the Tree Care Industry Association. So there wasn't as much of kind of a confusion and overlap between the two associations.
Between ISA and NAA.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they still operate pretty separate.
Yeah.
Right. For the most part, no,
they are completely separate.
Yeah. But I mean, back in the day, you felt there was a separation. So let's create the tree care industry because people were getting confused.
Yes. There was confusion in
now
the mission.
It's okay. There's
no confusion in the
mission. So now it's, hey, we're separate. They run their own deal, their own thing.
Well, they always have.
Yeah.
ISA is focused more on the educational side of things as it relates to tree care specific knowledge, and TCIA is focused on the business side.
So you're a part of that, the whole name change.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We initially, I remember going to Las Vegas and sitting with a group of the board and trying to figure out if we wanted to do accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
And what would accreditation do? What would it mean to transform the industry?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of collaborated and thought it was a good idea and thought, well, let's do a member survey. So we did a member survey. The member survey came back negative. They didn't want to do it. So
Why?
It's too much work.
Gotcha.
So then we came around and went back to our mission as to advance the tree care industry, and we implemented it anyways.
It's funny when you follow your North Star and you stick to it in your mission of what happens in life when it answers all your questions.
Right.
You have a question, just go to your mission. So I always tell companies that I talk to a lot is, what's your mission, what's your vision, what's your core values, because that's what's going to keep you on track every single time. If you start getting off track and you go, should we do this? Well, I don't know. Ask your mission and vision. Does it align? If it aligns, then yes. If it doesn't, no. From that. So that's neat to hear that you guys went back to that and said, no, we're going to do that because this is advancing the tree care industry. And that was back in 1996. I mean,
that was a number of years forward from.
But you got into everything in 1996.
Yes.
So when you got into the industry, I mean, I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but Stone Brewery also started in 1996.
Hey, and it was in San Diego.
It was in San Diego.
My first winter management conference. So.
Man, yeah, that's it. Cheers to that. That's awesome. Awesome. So getting in the industry, in the insurance, finding out this is your niche. This is what you're going after.
Yeah.
Getting with TCI, ISA. I mean, where'd you have to go to find, hey, who are the industry leaders? Where do I get the knowledge?
That's a really great question. So my focus when I was on the board of the TCIA was really to learn business problems, to learn the business itself.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the focus for the TCIA back then was really on the East Coast. So at that time, there was no direct exchange for me and new clients. I was just going there to give and learn. And, even one of the board members thought I was kind of a Pollyanna. So the focus was really to see what can we do to improve, what can we do to improve the industry. And I would give myself 100%. My son was a baby when I started on the board there. I traveled all over the United States to do these board meetings, and I did so with a lot of passion and still have a ton of passion for this business. And, I definitely love what I do.
It definitely shows. I mean, being in the industry as long as you've been in this niche in 28 years of doing this, it's every time I talk to you about something or an idea or a thought, I mean, it's like you just started.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like, which fires me up. And, I'm sure your people around you that, have trusted in you, but it does. It fires me up. I'm like, oh, man, Mark's on board? Hell yeah, let's do this.
Yep.
Man, he's with me. He thinks it's a good idea. But you just don't stop there just to listen. One of the greatest things about Mark is you come right alongside and you're a partner. Yep. You're like, all right, how do we do this together?
Yep.
Because I'm in business with you.
Exactly.
How do we figure this out? And Mark was kind of a key factor for myself of starting my own company, my own concrete company. You were the man when it came to that, because I remember calling you up, and I was actually here at Atlas Tree, and I was in the camper helping out Atlas at the time, and I called you up, and I'm like, man, what insurance I get? What do I do? And it's like, what type of work are you doing? And I told you, dealing with the trees and the roots, and you go, how about, you should probably do a C28. I mean, a C27, because that's a landscaper's license. You're doing, concrete. You're dealing with trees under 12 feet. You're not. I'm like, oh my gosh.
You're a GC outside.
Dude, that part right there. I'm like, thank you, dude. Thank you so much, Mark, because that was the part I couldn't overcome with starting my company, because I didn't know what I was going to do,
right?
Because I haven't been in there to get a C8 for that long. So you not only you help change my life, you help direct, 26 families that now have this type of work to be able to do this just from one simple conversation from that. And as I always say on this show, you never know the words you use and to who they use at that time, you never know what it's going to do, not only in their life, but people around them's life. So I always encourage everybody to say the right thing, do the right thing, help people out, because you change a life and you can change this whole industry.
I think, the experience of being a young insurance professional with a lot of piss and vinegar, and also looking at the effect that the calls of having the company owners call me with catastrophic injuries, deaths early in my career changed my trajectory. And I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. I remember many, many calls earlier when safety wasn't as prolific as it is now. And now tree care still is one of the most highest hazard industries there is. But the good companies can separate themselves. And that's really the focus is, if the companies that I work with don't have the right attitudes, they're not a fit for me. And I've learned that through experience. And, a guy falling out of a 100-foot ute because he was pushed to climb a tree he wasn't comfortable with.
Not pushed out of the tree.
No, not pushed out of the tree, but, pushed to do something he wasn't comfortable with, and then, just getting rolled over by a 9-ton crane truck, those kinds of instances. And they leave scars, just like personal tragedies. And if they don't, then you're too callous and you shouldn't be in this business. So that's where, I can sit across the room from a management team of a company and tell them, you have to do it a certain way. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a part where I don't want to be on that side. I mean, you're receiving those calls from not one, but multiple tree companies around the country. That's a tough position.
It is.
And then to keep composure because you have an owner that's scared.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What do we do? How do we do this? And then you're able to stay cool, calm, collective, even though you're like, oh crap. Yeah. This is a big deal, but you walk them through and you work with them.
Absolutely. And with the company that I work for, we're the fifth largest brokerages in the world, largest privately held company. I've got every resource known to man. And
did not know that.
It's like whatever is needed for that particular situation, wherever they are. Yeah. I have colleagues that I can call at a drop of a dime to come assist. And we have protocols for when those things happen. Sometimes things happen to really good companies as well, of course. Yeah. So you need to be able to have those protocols in place to make sure that there's an infrastructure to support them when the shit does hit the fan.
And it is, and that's where, Hub is, my partner in this, in both companies, in 3 companies. Yep. And in Jared's company also, who's normally on the show, but it's definitely that partnership. Yep. It's that, feeling comfortable to call you and not feel like I'm getting the runaround. Right. But just be able to shoot you straight. Yep. Mark, I'm in deep shit. That's exactly. What do I do? Yeah. How do I do this?
Only way.
And you're like the first call.
Yep.
The very first call, if something happens, or it's just calling to say, hey, and talk about what's going on in the industry and, hey, what are we doing in winter management? Where are we going out to dinner? Exactly. Things like that. Even though I fell asleep last time and I'll never forget that because they didn't wake me up to go. Yep. So I'm holding that to them, but the next one I'll be there.
So I think, I have a very low turnover on my team. I have many people that have been with me for a long, long time, 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I've got, and the new people that we attract to my team as well, just there's nothing that a tree company could experience in their business that we haven't experienced 100 times over.
Yeah. It's now let me ask you some of this. We have Hans online right now. You know Hans, the bad Hans, Instagram guru. I just had a conversation with today. He owns a company called New Jersey Crane Experts.
Okay.
Awesome training company. We're going to be partnering with him and the academy of doing some training out here on the West Coast and everything. But he says, I need to meet this guy, you know? And Hans has been in the industry for a long time, you know, out here, owns a company out in New Jersey and now owns a crane training school. But I'll have to connect you guys after the show on
Absolutely.
here.
Great.
So I want to dive in a little bit. There's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this. I want to dive into kind of the industry and working with different companies. And I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge to why does accidents happen? What is the cause of a lot of this stuff? To how to be able to handle this, what to look for, what not look for. Some advice. Let's kind of dive in for an individual who's listening to this. Even from somebody that climbs for a company to, hey, I've owned this company for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Just some knowledge that you can, 28 years of doing this, you've learned a couple things.
Right.
From multiple different companies
of
what not to do, what to do, starting a company. A lot of people that come on the show that'll ask questions, they'll have some questions that, hey, I want to start a company. What do I do?
Yes.
Hey, I just had an accident happen. What do I do?
Yes.
There's so many, what do I do? And I think we should create a little segment on the podcast show. It's called What the Beep Do I Do?
Yeah.
Starring Mark Shipp and giving advice to everybody that. So let's dive into kind of some of the biggest takeaways that you've learned in this industry from companies and accidents and things that happen. What are the major gaps that you see?
Well, I think, really it comes down to, it's not so, I want to address the gaps. It's really what are the characteristics of the highest performing companies? And that's really what you look at. What are the characteristics? The characteristics are they have low turnover employees. They have a benevolence toward their employees. So they think their employees as very valued assets and have personal relationships with them. If it's a large company, then there's ways for them to create that feeling of intimacy with their employees.
This stuff right here, everybody that's watching this, listen to this. If you own a company, if you work for a company, but if you own a company, these are some of the major points of that Mark's pointing out here that's super important.
Do you strive? Do you strive to be the employer of choice in your market? So I commonly hear, how do I compete with Cheapy Tree? How do I compete with that guy? Well, if you can't get your selling message to your audience about how different you are, then you need to focus on selling. What is your unique selling proposition to the marketplace, and how are you going to achieve the profitability goals that you have, if you have profitability goals, and understanding your costs and knowing how important the insurance is to your overall profitability. If you're an insurance risk, if you're bad insurance risk, and now especially we're entering into what's a really, really hard insurance market, especially in the excess areas because auto utilization is so much higher, distracted driving, all of those things that are happening, the excess, we're getting, volcanic verdicts. Mm-hmm. And they're just the verdicts are very, very high with auto accidents. So
there was a guy that just died last week in Northern California in an auto accident for a tree company.
Wow.
Had a seizure, and now there was other things that were accounted for it.
Sure.
But went backwards and died.
Wow.
Just last week.
So those are the things that, to make sure you're embracing safety, you're embracing risk as a potential profit gouger, and you look at it as, hey, if I don't pay attention to this, my company could be gone. And you have everybody on staff is a safety manager. They all manage their own safety. They manage the safety of those around them. And 99.9% of accidents, incidences in the tree care industry are preventable.
What was that percentage?
99.9%. I mean, there's instances where there's tree failure that it couldn't have been found.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been found. But those are fewer and far between.
Mm-hmm. So what does it come down to? Is it
It's attitude.
attitude?
Yeah.
For the individual?
For the owners.
For the owners.
For the owners, and making sure that they have the control of their safety program, that it's installed, it's monitored, it's managed, it's important. It's not seen as, oh, I got to do another safety meeting. Because you know what? The people in the company realize that you look at it as just an obligation, and they don't take it seriously.
So a new company starting, I need to create a safety program. Step one, I mean, what do we do?
So I always point them to the TCIA.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got everything you need to start a business, to build the infrastructure, great experts there at the TCIA that are willing to guide you and help you start the business. I mean,
so where do you go for that? You know, I mean, is there a certain person we call? How would I
receptionist, the receptionist,
and you're like, hey, I want to start a business.
Yep. They'll
in the
put
tree
you in the
care
right direction.
What do I do?
Yes.
And they're okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, because this is a question a lot of people have on the show is, you know, hey, I'm starting a business. What's your advice? Well, my advice is a little bit different than the person across the table than to Jared's on this. But, you know, I mean, I know how starting a business in California, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world. They make it difficult. You know, I had to Google and I'm looking up this and do I get this now or what license do I? There's nothing that was just clear of someone holding my hands and saying, let me show you how to do this.
Well, the question I have, the questions I have usually go away from, you know, it's more about the why. You know, why are you doing this? Who's your market? How are you going to be different?
Yeah.
And what's your strategic plan? What are your strategic goals for the first, second, third year? Where are your people coming from? And just kind of asking those questions. And do you have a written document that talks about how you're going to launch this thing? Do you need funding? Do you need capital to get this thing started?
Yeah.
If you do, you need a written business plan. You need to talk about your curriculum vitae, put that together, and you need to include that as part of your business plan and what you're going in, what you're doing and why. The banks will be interested in that. You can get financing based on an idea. That's amazing.
It is. And, you know, and I think a lot of people would start off different if they had that financing to start rather than, you know, a pickup truck and a chainsaw. I'm going to try to save up some money, no insurance, nothing. Let me just start cutting some trees and I'll make some money and then I'll get legit. But if they can start right away, let me tell you, I had that option, you know, with the concrete company is I didn't have to, I could have just did concrete, you know, under the table, but I'm 10 years ahead of the game because I did it right the first time, even though it wasn't super easy.
No.
And I didn't have someone holding my hand, but you know, hearing about the TCIA and them being able to do, I mean, that's important. And that's why I appreciate this industry so much for outlets like that, that are able to help individuals to do that, you know, and I can't wait to, hopefully have the TCIA on the show and talking about that and talking about business, because we need to be talking about business more, how to do smart business, how to build a business, how to grow a business, how to make more profit, how to invest back into your people, you know, and by investing in your people with training and education and safety, one, it helps you make more profit.
Yes.
And it's not a bad word.
No.
Invest in safety and make more money.
Absolutely.
It's very simple,
Absolutely.
you know, and I'm so glad you said that because, you know, there's different parts of safety. There's part of safety of we don't want anybody hurt and we want people to go home at night. But at the same time on safety, I want to make more money.
Right.
And the more money I make, the more I can give, the more better benefits, the more we grow, the more positions, so on and so forth for that. So that's neat to hear that. So I'll see if I can put this online. I'll find, you know, the number or something and post it. So for TCIA. So I'm like, you call this person,
Yep.
and they'll help you out from that. For that, so being in the industry, learning those things. I mean, this is the book you should write. This is a small book that make a 2-3 chapter book. Shoot, this is such good knowledge to have in there. So let's talk about some of the kind of incidents when you say 99.9%. Give us some examples of maybe some real life things without, saying any names or people or companies, but some things that happened where what changes they could have made to prevented stuff like that.
Well, like I talked about the climber that was rolled over by the 9-ton crane truck. So the 9-ton crane truck, small company in Pasadena, they were doing work at a church on a Monday. They didn't chalk their wheels. So they didn't put it in park, or they didn't put it in gear. So truck starts to roll towards the church. No one's there. Would have caused a lot of property damage, but he runs after it, tries to save the church, slips and falls. The truck rolls over him. Those are the types of incidences I'm talking about that are 100% preventable. There are plenty of times when you have instances where people take shortcuts.
Yeah.
There are 2 employees that are the scariest that work for tree companies. One's the guy that's lost his fear of heights. He's been in the business a long time. He thinks he knows everything. The other is the newest guy. So you've got that kind of bell curve, that spectrum. But the guy, they're both very scary. So you really have to move the people. If you look at a bell curve, you have to look at the people that lost their fear of heights and move them back over to the other side of the bell curve to have them reintroduced to that fear somehow, to get them to understand, hey, gravity is there. You cannot take shortcuts. You cannot do things the way they used to be done 25 years ago. There's been so many advances in tree climbing techniques that you've got to up your game. It's just like tree climbing 4.0. You've got to you're getting a software upgrade, and the ergonomics of the current tree care climbing equipment so much better.
Yeah. So what would you say to a guy that lost his fear in heights? I mean, how do you get it back?
It's a great question. I don't have a silver bullet for that, but it would be kind of assessing and training and really conversations.
It's definitely when
and recognizing the shortcuts. It's having the understanding. Hey, everybody takes for granted that this guy's been with the company for 20 years and knows everything. It's, hey, he's starting to take shortcuts, and it's having somebody there to call him out on it.
Yeah. That's definitely it. It's
and then reintroducing new techniques and saying, hey,
teaching and training them.
Yeah, you're doing it the old way, man. No wonder your back hurts.
Yeah, getting some people around, because he's top dog.
Yeah,
in his company.
Exactly.
No one's teaching him, and this goes back to the ownership of really pushing education and training and disrupting his patterns, disrupting his norm, where he does the same thing every single day. He does it better than anybody else around him. Disrupt it. Yep. Send him to a class. Send him to TCI. Send him to winter management.
Yep.
Let him meet some other people that go, oh, you climb on that system? Oh, dude, what are you, 20? I mean, this is 20 years ago.
Exactly.
And then he starts realizing and keeps upping his game. But education and training is everything. I've said this before on the show, but I had a gentleman come in and he did a year-long study with Pacific Gas and Electric. And his 2 things that I asked him, I said, what were the 2 biggest things of this study on safety that you learned? And his 2 things were, 1, middle management. They got people in that didn't know the industry,
right,
but they could read and write English and Spanish. That was leading them. And then 2 was training and education. They stopped teaching and they stopped educating their people.
Yep.
And when they did that, they get complacent. They seem like this is how we do it every day, but you've done it wrong for 20 years. Nobody's taught you the right way just because this is all you know.
Right.
So you keep disrupting that norm for that.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about kind of a new company kind of getting into the game, or an existing company who's been doing this a long time with the insurance game. A lot of times you're just, I think this is right. I don't talk to a lot of other tree companies to see what they're using.
Right.
It sounds good. It looks cheap. Let me go with it. What are some of the biggest things that they oversee? Excuse me.
Well, one of the things is we look at, do they have the right limits of insurance? Can you look at what the potential catastrophes are that the business might cause? And does the insurance represent the coverage that would cover that catastrophe?
Mm-hmm.
It would be, many times it'd be like workmanship error is something that's specifically excluded from an unendorsed general liability policy that it covers for if you have somebody that mistakes a work order, removes the wrong tree. I remember one of the cases that I had was new foreman comes to work, removes a whole row of wrong trees.
Gosh,
it's a $300,000 claim. So things like that.
What do they do with something like that?
If they don't have the coverage, then it's out of their pocket.
Oh my gosh.
So how do they finance it? I don't know. They go through the legal process, and maybe it's a bankruptcy or whatever the issue is, but it's better just to have the right coverage up front. I always say, I try to make your insurance coverage as mistake proof as possible, where if you forget to tell me about something, that it kind of collects that risk.
Yeah.
Many times in the early part of my career, there was a lot of misclassification going on. There was an understanding of, hey, if this guy's are on the ground, I'm going to classify them as landscape.
Yeah.
The guys that are up in the tree, those are trees. So I've got one guy that's in the tree, and the rest are landscape. Well, you can't do it that way. It's just the way the rules are, both for California and the National Council of Compensation Insurers.
Mm-hmm.
It's an all operations class code, so it goes into tree care.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was it skewed what's called expected loss rates. The loss rates for the industry, because there wasn't enough payroll in the tree category. Now we're seeing it less and less. The insurance companies are getting smarter about it, and the wages are going up. So we're seeing expected loss rates go down. Right now, we haven't seen workers' comp rates this low in my whole career. It's so good right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me. A lot of people on the West Coast, we got to deal with fires.
Yes.
What is Hub, Arbor Max? How are you guys partnering and helping out with that?
Well, we definitely underwrite the risk. There has to be, if you're dealing with utilities, it's so expensive. We can get the coverage, but it's basically your premium is a percentage of the limit of insurance. It's really, really high. That's called rate on line. So if we have on the low side exposure, it's $100,000 per million. On the high side, we've seen it go as high as $400,000 per million, depending on the risk, depending on the particulars of each individual company. If you drive around Northern California, you drive around Southern California, it's a freaking tinderbox.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have the training, you don't have the tools or resources, the understanding with your crews to understand, hey, we got a high fire condition day, it's windy, and these are the exposures, and you give your guys the ability to shut down work because it's too risky, and they understand that. I've partnered with some fire experts to help us to train companies on understanding vegetation, understanding fire behaviors, those kinds of issues. So it's just basically those are all preventable as well.
Yeah.
It's understanding the conditions and what you need to do to prevent fires from happening. And you could, if you had to do the work in that condition, what would you do to make it so that it was safe? I mean, there's certain products you can lay on the ground. There's certain things that you can do if you have to do the work during those high fire conditions.
Yeah, it's this year right now in California, this is set up to be the worst fire season ever.
Yes.
And for the last 5 years, every year keeps breaking the record.
Yes.
And right now, it's the whole state's ready to burn down.
Yeah, and it's not just it's California,
It's
Oregon, Washington, Utah,
yes. Yeah, Colorado,
Arizona, Colorado,
yeah.
Nevada.
It's really, really bad. Really bad. You know, there's crews right now up there on the lines, you know, cutting lines and cleaning up to get the power back up and everything right now. And we're still cleaning up in California in this area from 5 years ago.
Yep.
Still cleaning up, you know, homeowners and state counties and cities and everything that's out there right now. So let's talk about kind of let's talk about kind of like individuals within this company. I mean, into this employee wise, you know, for employers hiring employees, you know, I mean, employees are always how do I say it? They're the ones without training. Oh, how am I trying to say this? I'm messing up here. So employees that are coming in, you know, for myself is with all the training, all the education you give them, they still make those mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, they still have where you get that call and you're going, are you kidding me? He's been trained on this.
Yes.
We've taught him. We've looked at this. Why would he make that mistake? I mean, how does these employers deal with employees like that?
Well, my favorite motivational speaker growing up was Zig Ziglar.
Mm-hmm.
And his saying, and I say this quite often, but it really rings true for me, is it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. And that just says it all for me, because if somebody made a mistake and they forgot, and they really are trying hard, well, whatever happens, happens. But if their attitude was such that they weren't paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
that they weren't trying to learn it, that they were really just mailing it in.
Yeah.
They're not your employee. They're not the employee that you should have working for you. But if their attitude is such as, hey, I really want to learn this. I really want to be great at it. I screwed up. I forgot this one step. You know, can you teach me again?
Yeah.
All day long, you take care of that person.
Bingo.
Even if, and that's what I say. Everybody on my team, if you make a mistake and you're trying your best,
Mm-hmm.
I'll support you 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
That's you're spot on with that. And
That provides them a safe place to work.
Yeah. They're okay with making mistakes.
Yeah.
They're okay because they know they're going to learn from it.
Yeah.
They know they're going to get better, and you know they're going to get better
Yeah.
because of it from there. It's like Jeremy Tibbetts always used to say, you know, I'm okay with you making mistakes, just as long as it's not the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yep.
You know, learn from your mistakes and move on from that. Great, man. Man, this has been absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. I have so many people that keep popping up asking questions here. So we're going to get in, for everybody's watching, we're going to get into the questions here in a minute. So you're able to answer some questions from some people, and we're going to put them on live.
Okay.
So you get to see their faces and be able to talk and everything. So I want to just kind of finish up with this, and just, you know, you've given so much wisdom tonight and there's going to be a lot of people that have some questions that can contact you directly. Go to Hub, go to Arbor Max.
You can give out my personal mobile number.
Give it out. What do you got? What's your number?
805-729-3073.
All right, you guys heard it. So if you guys want to give him a call, shoot him a text. He'll get you the answers. He helped me myself out in my career and helped me get on the right path of an area I didn't know. I didn't have any wisdom. I didn't know where to go, and I appreciate that to this day.
Thank you.
So with all the wisdom that you've given tonight on the insurance game, in the tree care game, of what you've learned and being the guru to it all, what's kind of your last, wisdom that you can just give out, that if anybody's going to remember anything from the show, what would be something that you've given so much. You can almost repeat what you've said on some of those. But what's your wisdom to individuals or companies or employers?
There is no quick fix. There is no shortcut. Lean in to the hard stuff. Have a great attitude, and love your employees. Love the people you work with.
Love. Well, Mark, again, appreciate you being on the show today, man.
Thank you for having me.
It was, you didn't know you were going to be on the show today.
No.
You didn't know you were going to be drinking beer in Santa Rosa with me and stuff. And I'm going to be looking forward to having dinner with you tonight.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you and appreciate everything you do, not just for me and our companies, but also just for the industry. Being the staple, being the voice, being the person that everybody can always reach out to with a lot of love and a lot of good attitude and trying to help people just better their lives. And I appreciate that, man.
Well, the thing that keeps me going by doing this and with a great deal of zeal and passion is knowing the work that I've done and the work that I'm doing keeps people coming home to their families. And where I don't know too many places in my business where you can have that direct connection, and that fires me up. It fires me up every day, and I love it.
You get me fired up, man. That's awesome.